Marcus Chen wiped the sweat from his forehead as he stared at the ancient tome spread across his kitchen table. The leather-bound book had cost him 3 months' salary, purchased from a sketchy antiquarian who claimed it contained real magic. Most people would have laughed at the idea, but Marcus wasn't most people. He was desperate. The factory where he worked had announced layoffs again. His mother's medical bills were piling up faster than he could pay them. His younger sister Emma needed money for college, and their father had walked out on them 5 years ago, leaving nothing but debt and broken promises. Marcus had tried everything legitimate: second jobs, loans, even selling his blood plasma twice a week. Nothing was enough. The book promised a solution that sounded impossible: summoning a demon to grant wishes. The ritual required specific ingredients that had taken Marcus weeks to gather: candles made from human fat, salt from the Dead Sea, and his own blood drawn under a full moon. The whole thing felt ridiculous, but he had run out of rational options. As midnight approached, Marcus began drawing the summoning circle on his apartment floor with chalk mixed with graveyard dirt. The symbols looked ancient and alien, nothing like any language he recognized. His hands shook as he placed the candles at precise points around the circle. This was either the stupidest thing he had ever done, or his family's salvation. The incantation was written in what the book claimed was pre-Babylonian script, with phonetic translations that hurt his throat to pronounce. Marcus felt foolish chanting nonsense syllables in his cramped apartment, but he pressed on. The candles flickered strangely, their flames turning from orange to deep purple. The temperature in the room dropped so quickly that his breath became visible. Then the circle erupted in black fire. Marcus stumbled backward as smoke poured from the flames, coalescing into a figure that defied every expectation he had about demons. Instead of horns and red skin, a woman materialized in the circle. She stood nearly 7 feet tall with pale silver skin that seemed to shimmer with its own light. Her hair was long and white as fresh snow, and her eyes burned with the cold light of distant stars. She wore what looked like armor made from crystallized shadow, and power radiated from her like heat from a forge. "Well, well," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate in Marcus's bones. "It has been centuries since someone successfully completed that particular summoning. I am Valeth, Queen of the Ninth Circle, Sovereign of the Burning Depths and Empress of Endless Night." She paused, studying Marcus with those unsettling eyes. "And you, little human, have just bound me to grant you 3 wishes. Marcus's mouth went dry. The book had mentioned 3 wishes, but seeing this otherworldly being in his dingy apartment made the whole situation feel surreal. "You're really a demon? Like from hell?" Valeth laughed, a sound like silver bells mixed with distant thunder. "Hell is such a limiting concept. I rule realms that exist between dimensions where the laws of your reality hold no power. But yes, by your understanding, I am what you would call a demon, and you, brave fool, have summoned me." She stepped to the edge of the circle, her form casting no shadow despite the candlelight. "The binding is complete. I am compelled to grant you 3 wishes, though I warn you. Be very careful what you ask for." Marcus had thought about this moment for weeks, planning exactly what he would request. The book had warned about the importance of precise wording when dealing with supernatural entities. "My first wish is for infinite physical strength." The demon queen tilted her head, seeming genuinely surprised. "Infinite strength? Not wealth, not power over others, not immortality? You wish for strength without limit?" "That's right," Marcus said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. "I want to be strong enough to handle anything." Valeth smiled, revealing teeth that looked like they were carved from diamonds. How refreshingly direct. "Very well, human. Your wish is granted." She raised one elegant hand, and Marcus felt something fundamental change within his body. The transformation was immediate and overwhelming. Energy coursed through his muscles like liquid lightning. He could feel his cellular structure reorganizing itself, becoming something beyond human limitation. When he flexed his hand experimentally, the air around his fingers shimmered with barely contained force. "Be warned," Valeth said, watching his reaction with interest. "Infinite strength means exactly that. You now possess the potential to shatter planets with a careless gesture, to punch holes through the fabric of space itself. Control will be your greatest challenge." Marcus stared at his hands in wonder and terror. He could feel the power contained within them, vast beyond comprehension yet perfectly under his command. When he touched the table gently, His finger left a small dent in the solid wood despite using what felt like no pressure at all. "Why does this binding compel you to grant wishes?" Marcus asked, trying to process what had just happened to him. "Couldn't someone like you just refuse?" "The magic you used is older than your species," Valeth explained. "It was created by beings who understood the fundamental forces that govern reality. When properly executed, it creates a binding that even I cannot break. However, I am not without my own agency in how I fulfill these wishes." Her smile became slightly predatory. "I have considerable latitude in interpretation." Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the supernatural cold still emanating from the circle. "What do you mean?" "Simply that while I must grant your wishes, the consequences of those wishes are entirely natural. You asked for infinite strength and you have received it. But strength without wisdom, without restraint, without understanding of its proper application, that could prove quite dangerous indeed." As if to emphasize her point, Marcus shifted his weight and heard a concerning crack from the floorboards beneath his feet. He was going to need to learn control very quickly, or his newfound power would cause more problems than it solved. "You have 2 wishes remaining," Valeth reminded him. "I suggest you consider them very carefully, and perhaps invest in some training on how to manage what you have already received." Marcus nodded, already beginning to understand that getting everything he wanted might be more complicated than he had imagined. The Demon Queen's presence filled his apartment with otherworldly energy, and he realized that his life had just become infinitely more complex than unpaid bills and factory work. The real test would be what he did with this power and what he wished for next. The next morning brought a harsh lesson in the reality of infinite strength. Marcus woke up and immediately put his fist through the wall when he tried to hit his alarm clock's snooze button. The device disintegrated into component atoms, leaving only a small crater where his nightstand used to be. His coffee mug exploded when he picked it up, and he accidentally tore the handle off his refrigerator while getting milk. Valeth had remained in his apartment overnight, though she no longer needed the summoning circle to maintain her presence. She watched his struggles with what might have been amusement as he tried to brush his teeth without destroying his toothbrush. "This is harder than I thought," Marcus admitted, holding the remains of his 4th toothbrush of the morning. "How am I supposed to function in normal society like this?" "Most beings who gain power gradually learn control as their abilities develop," the Demon Queen explained. "You have bypassed that learning process entirely. Your mind still thinks in terms of human limitations while your body operates on cosmic scales." Marcus tried to open his apartment door and accidentally ripped it completely off its hinges. The metal frame bent like putty in his grip. "Great. Now I can't even leave my own place without causing property damage." "Perhaps we should relocate somewhere with fewer fragile objects," Valeth suggested. "I know of a dimension where the landscape is composed entirely of crystallized space-time. Nothing there can be damaged by physical force." "I can't just abandon my life here," Marcus protested. "I have responsibilities. My mom needs me, my sister needs college money, and I still have a job." He paused, looking at his hands. "Well, assuming I can figure out how to work without breaking everything I touch." The Demon Queen studied him with those star-bright eyes. "Your concern for others is admirable if foolish. Most beings who summon creatures like me seek power for selfish reasons. You genuinely care about your family's welfare." Marcus spent the next several hours practicing control in his apartment, or what remained of it. He learned to move with extraordinary delicacy, treating everything around him as if it were made of soap bubbles. Every action required conscious thought and careful modulation of force. Picking up a glass of water became an exercise in precision engineering. By noon, he had managed to drink coffee without destroying the cup, though he had gone through 17 mugs in the process. Progress was measurably slow, but he was adapting. The human capacity for learning under pressure was one of the species' greatest strengths. "Your adaptability is impressive," Valeth observed. "Most beings would have given up by now or demanded that I reverse the wish." "The thought crossed my mind," Marcus admitted. "But I didn't wish for this power just to give up when it got difficult. My family needs help, and this strength might be the key to providing it." When Marcus tried to leave for work, he discovered new complications. His footsteps, even when carefully controlled, left small cracks in the concrete sidewalk. Car doors crumpled at his touch, and he quickly realized that public transportation was impossible. Every surface he contacted bore the imprint of his passage. The solution came when he remembered that precise control was more important than gentle force. Instead of trying to touch things lightly, he learned to distribute his contact across larger surface areas and to move with fluid, continuous motions rather than discrete actions. It was like learning to walk all over again, but with the stakes infinitely higher. At the factory, Marcus faced his greatest challenge yet. His job involved operating heavy machinery, handling steel components, and working alongside other people. The foreman, Carl, noticed something was different immediately. "Chen, what did you do to yourself over the weekend?" Carl asked, watching Marcus handle a steel beam that normally required 2 people to lift. "You moving that thing like it's made of cardboard." Marcus had prepared an explanation. "Been hitting the gym pretty hard lately. New workout routine." It wasn't technically a lie, though his gym was his apartment and his workout involved learning not to accidentally destroy everything around him. The real test came when a hydraulic press malfunctioned, threatening to crush a coworker named Jake, who had gotten caught between the massive metal plates. Without thinking, Marcus grabbed the descending press and stopped it cold. The machinery groaned and sparked as immovable force met unstoppable object, but the press could not overcome Marcus's grip. "Holy hell, Marcus," Jake gasped as he scrambled to safety. "How did you stop that thing?" "It weighs 12 tons. Marcus realized he had made a mistake. There was no way to explain what had just happened without revealing his supernatural abilities. The entire factory floor had gone silent, every worker staring at him in shock and disbelief. "Adrenaline," Marcus said weakly. "You hear stories about people lifting cars when someone's in danger." Carl looked at the bent metal where Marcus's hands had gripped the press. "Son, adrenaline don't explain finger-shaped dents in solid steel." That evening, Marcus returned home to find Valeth waiting with what looked suspiciously like satisfaction on her otherworldly features. "Your first day with infinite strength proved eventful," she observed. "I saved Jake's life," Marcus said defensively. "I couldn't just let him get crushed." "Indeed. And in doing so, you revealed the impossible nature of your abilities to dozens of witnesses. Word will spread. Questions will be asked. Government agencies will become interested in studying you." The Demon Queen's smile grew wider. The consequences of power extend far beyond the power itself. Marcus slumped into his reinforced chair, one of the few pieces of furniture that could withstand his presence. "I didn't think about that. I just reacted. Precisely my point. You wished for infinite strength, but you did not consider the social, political, and practical implications of possessing such power. Your second wish might want to address some of these complications. What would you suggest?" Valeth's expression became thoughtful. "I cannot advise you on the content of your wishes, as that would violate the terms of our binding. I can only fulfill them and observe the results. However, I will note that power without the wisdom to use it effectively is often more curse than blessing." Marcus considered this. His infinite strength was already changing his life in ways he hadn't anticipated. The ability to help people was overshadowed by the danger he posed to everything around him, and the unwanted attention his abilities would inevitably attract. "How long do I have to make my remaining wishes?" The binding persists until all 3 wishes are granted, regardless of how much time passes. You could wait years between wishes if you chose. Marcus nodded, realizing he needed time to understand the full implications of what he had already gained before deciding what to ask for next. The power to reshape reality through wishes was not something to be rushed, and he was beginning to understand why Valeth had warned him to be careful. His phone rang, and when he answered it, his grip automatically adjusted to avoid crushing the device. Small victories in learning control, but he suspected much greater challenges lay ahead. Within 48 hours, Marcus's life became a nightmare of unwanted attention. The factory incident had been recorded on multiple cell phones, and by Tuesday morning, videos of him stopping a 12-ton hydraulic press with his bare hands were trending across every social media platform. The footage was grainy and poorly lit, but it clearly showed something impossible happening. The first government agents arrived at his apartment before he finished his morning coffee. 2 men in identical black suits stood at his destroyed doorway, flashing credentials that identified them as agents from a division Marcus had never heard of. "Mr. Chen," the taller agent said. "I'm Agent Morrison. This is Agent Price. We're with the Department of Enhanced Individual Monitoring. We'd like to ask you some questions about the incident at your workplace." Marcus had expected this, but it still made his stomach twist with anxiety. I already talked to the police. It was just an accident with the machinery. Mr. Chen, Agent Price interrupted, producing a tablet that showed high-definition footage of the incident from multiple angles. We have 17 different camera recordings of you stopping a hydraulic press that was operating under 12 tons of pressure. The engineering analysis suggests that what you did should be physically impossible for any human being. Valeth materialized in the corner of the room, invisible to the agents but clearly amused by the situation. She had explained that only Marcus could see her unless she chose otherwise, which gave her the perfect vantage point to observe the unfolding chaos. I'd like to speak with a lawyer, Marcus said carefully. Mr. Chen, you're not under arrest, Morrison replied. We're simply trying to understand what happened. If you've somehow developed enhanced abilities, there are resources available to help you manage them safely. Marcus almost laughed at the word safely. He had spent the previous night practicing in an abandoned quarry outside the city, testing the limits of his strength. When he punched a granite cliff face with minimal force, he had created a cave system that extended 300 feet into solid rock. Safe was a relative concept when you could accidentally trigger earthquakes. What kind of resources? He asked, genuinely curious despite his wariness. Price leaned forward. Training facilities, specialized equipment, medical monitoring. We work with several individuals who possess abilities beyond normal human parameters. You wouldn't be alone in this. There are others like me? Not exactly like you, Morrison admitted. What you demonstrated appears to be unprecedented in terms of raw physical capability. But there are others with enhanced abilities, yes. Marcus considered this information. The existence of other enhanced individuals suggested that his situation, while unique in scale, was not entirely without precedent. That could be either reassuring or terrifying, depending on how the government typically handled such cases. I need time to think about this, Marcus said finally. The agents exchanged glances. Mr. Chen, with respect, time may not be a luxury you have. Every hour that passes without proper guidance increases the risk of accidentally causing harm. Yesterday you saved a man's life, but what happens when you sneeze too hard near a load-bearing wall? The agent's point was uncomfortably valid. Marcus had been thinking the same thing since gaining his abilities. The potential for catastrophic accidents was enormous, and his control was still developing. After the agents left, promising to return the next day for his answer, Marcus found himself facing a new problem. News vans had appeared on his street, and reporters were interviewing his neighbors about any unusual activities they might have observed. His landlord called to demand an explanation for the damaged apartment, and his phone hadn't stopped ringing with calls from unknown numbers. This is spiraling out of control, Marcus told Valeth. I wished for strength to help my family, not to become some kind of government experiment or media circus. Power rarely remains hidden for long, the Demon Queen observed. Humans are curious creatures and they fear what they cannot understand or control. Your strength threatens the established order simply by existing. Marcus's sister Emma called that afternoon, her voice tight with worry. Marcus, there are news trucks outside Mom's hospital. They're asking questions about you, showing video of you at work. What's going on? The realization hit Marcus like a physical blow. His newfound abilities weren't just affecting him. They were putting his family at risk of unwanted scrutiny and potential danger. The very people he had wanted to protect were now exposed because of his choices. I'll handle it, Em. Don't talk to any reporters, okay? Just focus on taking care of Mom. Marcus, that video. What you did looks impossible. Are you in some kind of trouble? Marcus closed his eyes, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders like a mountain. It's complicated. But I promise you, everything I'm doing is to help our family. That evening brought a new complication. A group calling itself the Church of Human Purity had organized a protest outside his apartment building. They carried signs declaring enhanced individuals to be abominations and threats to natural order. Their leader, a man with wild eyes and a megaphone, proclaimed that people like Marcus represented the beginning of humanity's end. Watching from his window, Marcus felt a deep sadness. He had gained the power to help people, but instead found himself feared and reviled by those who saw him as something inhuman. Fear is often the first response to the unknown, Valeth commented, joining him at the window. Your species has a complicated relationship with power. They crave it for themselves while simultaneously fearing it in others. Is there a way to fix this? To make people understand that I'm not a threat? Understanding requires time and demonstration. But first, you must decide what you truly want. Do you wish to be humanity's protector, its conqueror, or simply to be left alone? Each path requires different approaches. Marcus thought about his mother in the hospital, fighting cancer with insufficient insurance coverage. He thought about Emma, brilliant and ambitious but potentially unable to afford college. He thought about Jake, who would have died without Marcus's intervention, and about all the other people who might need help that only someone with his abilities could provide. I want to help people, he said finally, but I need to be smarter about how I do it. Valeth nodded approvingly. A worthy goal. Perhaps your second wish should address some of the complications that your first wish has created. Marcus spent the night considering his options. Infinite strength was proving to be both blessing and curse. He could help people in ways that had never been possible before, but the social and political ramifications were threatening to overwhelm any good he might accomplish. By morning, he had made his decision about the second wish. It was time to address the unintended consequences of power and find a way to use his abilities effectively without destroying the life he was trying to protect. The Demon Queen waited patiently as Marcus formulated his request, her ancient eyes gleaming with interest at what the human would choose next. The binding compelled her to grant his wishes, but it did not prevent her from being curious about the choices he would make. Outside, the protesters continued their vigil, and news vans maintained their watch. Government agents sat in unmarked cars monitoring the building. Marcus's simple wish for strength had set in motion a chain of events that was reshaping not just his life, but the world's understanding of what was possible. The second wish would either fix these problems or make them infinitely worse. Marcus stood at his shattered window watching the chaos below. 3 days had passed since the factory incident, and the situation had escalated beyond anything he could have imagined. Military vehicles now flanked the news vans, and he could see snipers positioned on nearby rooftops. The government's patience was apparently wearing thin. They're treating me like a weapon of mass destruction, Marcus said to Valeth, who sat perched on what remained of his couch like a otherworldly cat. In many ways. You are, she replied matter-of-factly. A single human with infinite strength could theoretically destabilize entire nations. Your restraint is the only thing preventing global panic. Agent Morrison's voice echoed through a megaphone from the street below. Mr. Chen, we need to talk. The situation is escalating beyond our control. There are forces that want to handle this less diplomatically than we do. Marcus understood the veiled threat. If he didn't cooperate with the relatively reasonable Department of Enhanced Individual Monitoring, less reasonable agencies might take over. The kind of agencies that solved problems with extreme prejudice. I've made my decision about the second wish, Marcus announced. Valeth's eyes brightened with interest. Indeed, and what wisdom has this experience taught you? Marcus had spent hours considering his options. Raw power without the ability to use it effectively was worse than useless. It was dangerous. My second wish is for perfect knowledge of how to use my abilities responsibly and effectively, including understanding all the consequences of my actions before I take them. The Demon Queen tilted her head thoughtfully. Interesting. You seek wisdom to accompany power. This is unusual in my experience. Will you grant it? I am bound to do so. But I must warn you, perfect knowledge includes awareness of many things you might prefer not to know. The weight of omniscience regarding consequences can be crushing for mortal minds. I'll take that risk, Marcus said firmly. I can't keep stumbling around blindly with this much power. Valeth rose gracefully and extended her hand toward him. Very well. Your second wish is granted. The transformation was immediate and overwhelming. Knowledge flooded Marcus's mind like a dam bursting. Suddenly, he could see the intricate web of cause and effect that connected every possible action to its ultimate consequences. When he looked at the agents below, he could instantly understand 17 different ways the current standoff might unfold. Ranging from peaceful resolution to international incident, the gift was both blessing and curse. He could now see that if he simply walked outside and surrendered to government custody, it would lead to decades of being studied like a laboratory specimen, with his family eventually being relocated to a safe house that was really a gilded prison. He could see that if he fled, it would trigger a global manhunt that would endanger countless innocent people. But he could also see a third path, one that required precise timing and careful navigation of human psychology and politics. "You understand now," Valeth observed, watching his expression change as the knowledge settled into his consciousness. "Power without wisdom is chaos, but wisdom without the will to act is paralysis." Marcus nodded, his mind processing thousands of potential scenarios simultaneously. "I can see how to fix this, but it's going to require taking some significant risks." He moved to the window and called down to Agent Morrison. "I'll come out, but I want to speak to whoever's really in charge. Not just the field agents." Within an hour, a black helicopter landed in the street and a woman in a general's uniform emerged. Marcus's enhanced knowledge immediately identified her as General Patricia Hayes, director of the Pentagon's Supernatural Threat Assessment Division, a department so classified that most government officials didn't know it existed. "Mr. Chen," General Hayes said as she entered his apartment flanked by heavily armed soldiers, "I'm going to be direct with you. Your abilities represent either humanity's greatest asset or its greatest threat. Which one depends entirely on the choices you make in the next 10 minutes. "I appreciate your honesty," Marcus replied. "I want to help, but I need guarantees about my family's safety and my own autonomy." "You're hardly in a position to make demands," one of the soldiers growled. General Hayes held up a hand for silence. "Actually, he is. Mr. Chen could kill everyone in this building before we could draw our weapons. The fact that he's choosing to negotiate rather than simply leaving tells me everything I need to know about his character." Marcus's perfect knowledge showed him exactly how this conversation could unfold. "General, I can see 47 different ways this meeting could end. In 39 of them, everyone benefits. In 8 of them, thousands of people die unnecessarily. I'd prefer one of the first 39 options." The general's eyebrows rose slightly. "You can predict the outcome of our conversation?" "Among other things, yes. My second wish gave me perfect understanding of consequences. I can see exactly what will happen if I agree to work with you, if I refuse, or if I choose any other course of action." "Then you know what I'm going to offer you." Marcus nodded. "A position with a new task force designed to handle supernatural threats, complete autonomy over which missions I accept, protection for my family, and a salary that will cover my mother's medical bills and my sister's education." General Hayes smiled for the first time since entering the apartment. "It seems my reputation for directness precedes me. What else do you see?" "I see that this offer is genuine, but that there are other factions within the government that will try to undermine it. I see that accepting your offer will put me in contact with other enhanced individuals, some of whom are significantly more dangerous than I am. And I see that this is the beginning of something much larger than just managing people with superpowers." The general's expression grew serious. "What kind of larger?" Marcus's enhanced knowledge showed him glimpses of the future. Invasions from other dimensions, supernatural creatures attracted to Earth by the growing concentration of enhanced individuals, ancient evils awakening in response to changing cosmic conditions. "Threats that conventional military forces won't be able to handle," Marcus said carefully. "The kind of threats that require people like me to address." Valeth, invisible to everyone else in the room, smiled with what looked like pride. Her human champion was beginning to understand the true scope of the power he had requested and the responsibility that came with it. "There's one more thing," Marcus continued. "I'll need complete transparency about any other enhanced individuals in government custody or employment. No surprises, no hidden agendas." "That's a lot of trust to ask for," General Hayes observed. "It's a lot of power to place in your service," Marcus countered. "My abilities could reshape the balance of global power if misused. Trust needs to flow both ways." The general considered this for a long moment, clearly weighing the political and practical implications of Marcus's demands. His perfect knowledge showed him that she was genuinely committed to using enhanced individuals for legitimate defense purposes, but that she was also under pressure from hawks who wanted to weaponize people like him for offensive operations. "Very well. Mr. Chen, you have my word, and I'll put it in writing. Welcome to Project Aegis." As they shook hands, Marcus felt the weight of his new responsibilities settling onto his shoulders. His infinite strength had made him powerful, but his perfect knowledge of consequences had made him truly dangerous. Now he would have to learn to navigate the complex world of supernatural threats and government politics while trying to protect both humanity and his own moral compass. The easy part was over. The real challenges were just beginning. The Aegis facility was built into a mountain in Colorado, hidden behind layers of security that made NORAD look like a suburban office building. Marcus arrived 3 days after accepting General Hayes's offer. His family safely relocated to a secure compound in Montana where his mother could receive the best cancer treatment available and Emma could attend a prestigious university nearby. Welcome to the most classified facility on Earth, Dr. Sarah Winters said as she led Marcus through corridors carved from solid granite. She was the project's chief scientist, a woman in her 50s whose calm demeanor suggested she had seen things that would terrify most people. We currently house and train 12 enhanced individuals, though their abilities vary widely in both scope and origin. Marcus's perfect knowledge had already shown him detailed information about his future teammates, but he let Dr. Winters provide the official briefing. It was important to maintain the illusion that his abilities had limits even among allies. The first person he met was Sophia Reyes, a former Marine whose touch could phase matter through solid objects. She could walk through walls, make bullets pass harmlessly through her body, or reach inside locked safes to retrieve their contents. Her abilities had manifested during an IED explosion in Afghanistan, when her desperate desire to save her squad had somehow allowed her to pull them through solid concrete to safety. Nice to meet someone else who didn't ask for this, Sophia said, shaking Marcus's hand in the facility's common room. Most of the others here volunteered for experimental programs or actively sought out their abilities. Next was Dr. James Wong, a physicist whose mind had been enhanced during a laboratory accident involving experimental quantum processors. He could perform calculations that required supercomputers, visualize 11-dimensional mathematics, and predict the behavior of complex systems with startling accuracy. His brain operated on principles that normal neuroscience couldn't explain. Your abilities are fascinating from a theoretical standpoint, James told Marcus. Infinite strength suggests that you're somehow bypassing the conservation of energy, which should be impossible. I'd love to run some tests to understand the underlying mechanics. Maybe later, Marcus replied diplomatically. His perfect knowledge showed him that allowing James to study his abilities too closely would lead to discoveries that neither of them was ready to handle. The team's most unsettling member was Rachel Park, a former CIA operative whose psychic abilities allowed her to read minds and project thoughts into others. She had been captured during a mission in Eastern Europe and subjected to brutal experiments before her abilities manifested, and she escaped by forcing her captors to unlock her chains and walk away. I'm trying not to read your thoughts without permission, Rachel said when they were introduced. But you're broadcasting some very interesting things on the surface level. Something about demon queens and wishes? Marcus felt a chill of concern. If Rachel could detect traces of his connection to Valeth, it could complicate everything. Just an active imagination, he said carefully. His perfect knowledge showed him that Rachel suspected there was more to his story, but that she would respect his privacy as long as he proved trustworthy. It also showed him that her own abilities came with a terrible cost. She was slowly losing the ability to distinguish between her own thoughts and those of others, a condition that would eventually drive her insane if untreated. The most powerful member of the team was Alexander Kozlov, a Russian defector whose body could absorb and redirect any form of energy. He had survived a nuclear accident by unconsciously absorbing lethal radiation, then spent years learning to control abilities that made him essentially invulnerable to conventional weapons. Your strength is impressive, Alexander said in heavily accented English, but strength alone is limited. True power comes from understanding how different forces interact. Marcus's enhanced knowledge revealed that Alexander was both more and less than he appeared. The Russian had been enhanced through deliberate experimentation with artifacts recovered from a crashed alien vessel, and his defection to the United States was part of a complex intelligence operation that neither government fully understood. The team's final member was Maria Santos, whose abilities defied easy categorization. She could manipulate probability itself, making unlikely events more likely to occur and impossible events slightly possible. She had discovered her powers during a casino visit in Las Vegas, when her desperate need to pay for her daughter's surgery had caused her to win 17 consecutive hands of poker. Luck is just probability wearing a disguise, Maria explained over dinner. Most people think random events are truly random, but everything has underlying patterns. I just adjust the pattern slightly. Working with the Aegis team gave Marcus perspective on how different people handled extraordinary abilities. Some, like Sophia and Rachel, had been traumatized by the circumstances that gave them powers and struggled with the psychological aftermath. Others, like James and Alexander, approached their abilities with scientific curiosity and methodical discipline. Maria seemed to have the healthiest relationship with her powers, treating them as tools to be used carefully rather than burdens to be endured. Their first mission together came 2 weeks after Marcus's arrival. Satellite imagery had detected unusual energy readings from a facility in North Korea, where intelligence suggested that the regime was experimenting with supernatural artifacts recovered from various archaeological sites. "This is reconnaissance only," General Hayes emphasized during the briefing. "We need to know what they're working on, not start World War III. Marcus's perfect knowledge showed him that the mission would not go according to plan. The North Korean facility contained something much more dangerous than anyone suspected, and their reconnaissance would quickly escalate into a life-or-death struggle against forces that conventional military thinking couldn't address. "General," Marcus said carefully, "I think we should prepare for this mission to become more complicated than expected." "What do you see?" Hayes asked. She had quickly learned to trust Marcus's ability to predict consequences. "The facility isn't just experimenting with artifacts. They've successfully activated something that's been dormant for centuries, something that considers humans to be either food or obstacles." The briefing room fell silent as the implications sank in. If Marcus's predictions were accurate, they weren't just dealing with human adversaries anymore. "Recommendations?" Hayes asked. Marcus's enhanced knowledge showed him multiple potential approaches, each with different risks and benefits. "We go in prepared for supernatural combat, not just espionage. And we accept that containment might be more important than gathering intelligence." As the team prepared for deployment, Marcus realized that his role was evolving beyond simply being the strongest member of the group. His perfect knowledge of consequences was making him their unofficial strategist, the person who could see 3 moves ahead in games that others didn't even know they were playing. Bailiff appeared beside him as he reviewed mission plans in his quarters. "Your second wish is serving you well," she observed. "You're beginning to understand that true power comes not from strength alone, but from the wisdom to use that strength effectively." "The mission tomorrow is going to be dangerous," Marcus said. "I can see ways for everyone to survive, but they require perfect timing and coordination. And if someone makes a mistake? If the variables change unexpectedly?" Marcus's perfect knowledge showed him contingencies upon contingencies, backup plans for backup plans. "Then I'll have to use my strength in ways that might reveal exactly how powerful I really am." The Demon Queen smiled. "Perhaps it's time your teammates learned the truth about what you've become. Trust is a form of strength too, you know." As Marcus prepared for sleep, he wondered if his third wish would be necessary to handle whatever they found in North Korea, or if his first 2 wishes would prove sufficient for the challenges ahead. Either way, he was about to discover just how far his newfound abilities could take him when the stakes were higher than personal survival. The North Korean facility was supposed to be a simple underground research complex. What the Aegis team found instead was a portal to nightmare. They had infiltrated through the facility's service tunnels, Sophia phasing them through multiple security barriers while Rachel monitored the guards' thoughts for signs of detection. James calculated optimal patrol routes, Alexander absorbed and redirected the facility's electronic surveillance, and Maria subtly influenced probability to ensure that security cameras malfunctioned at precisely the right moments. Marcus's perfect knowledge had prepared him for what they would discover, but seeing it firsthand was still shocking. The North Koreans hadn't just been experimenting with ancient artifacts, they had been feeding them. Human sacrifices, dozens of them, arranged in ritualistic patterns around a massive stone altar that predated human civilization by millions of years. "My God," Dr. Winters whispered through their communication link. "Those energy readings we detected, they're not coming from machinery." The altar pulsed with malevolent life, covered in symbols that seemed to shift and writhe when viewed directly. Around its base lay the remnants of what Marcus's enhanced knowledge identified as binding circles, protective wards that had been deliberately broken by the facility's researchers. "They woke something up," Rachel said, her psychic abilities, detecting traces of an intelligence so alien and vast that it made her stumble, something that's been sleeping for eons. Marcus could see the full scope of what had happened. The ancient entity bound within the altar had been awakened by the ritual sacrifices, but it was still partially contained by damaged but not completely destroyed bindings. The North Korean researchers had been trying to bargain with it, offering more sacrifices in exchange for power and knowledge. "We need to evacuate this facility and seal it," Marcus said urgently. "If that thing breaks free completely, it won't stop with North Korea." Alexander shook his head. "Russian intelligence indicates similar facilities in at least 6 other countries. If we simply contain this one, the others will continue their work. This entity has siblings." Marcus's perfect knowledge confirmed Alexander's assessment. The ancient beings were part of a cosmic hierarchy that had once ruled Earth before humanity existed. They had been imprisoned by even older powers during a war between dimensions, but human interference was systematically weakening their bonds. "So what do we do?" Sophia asked. "We can't fight something like that." "Actually," Marcus said slowly, "we can. But it's going to require me to reveal exactly what I'm capable of." He explained his wishes to the team, watching their expressions change from disbelief to awe to concern, as they processed the implications of infinite strength and perfect knowledge of consequences. "You've been holding back during training," Maria realized. "When you arm wrestled Alexander and he won." "I let him win," Marcus admitted. "My actual strength would have launched him through several walls and possibly into orbit." James's enhanced intellect immediately grasped the mathematical implications. "Infinite strength means you're operating outside the normal constraints of physics. You could theoretically punch holes in space-time itself." "Which is exactly what I'm going to have to do," Marcus said grimly. "The entity can only be destroyed by unmaking the dimensional space it occupies. That requires applying force in ways that violate every law of physics." Rachel reached out with her psychic abilities and touched the edge of Marcus's consciousness, immediately recoiling. "There's something else in your mind, something ancient and powerful, watching everything we do." Valeth materialized, becoming visible to the entire team for the first time. The Demon Queen's presence filled the underground chamber with otherworldly energy that made their equipment malfunction and caused the temperature to drop by 20 degrees. "Greetings, mortals," Valeth said with casual elegance. "I am the entity that granted your champion his abilities. And I must say, you have stumbled into a situation that is about to become quite entertaining." The team stared at her in shock, but before anyone could respond, the altar began to crack. The ancient entity was responding to Valeth's presence, recognizing her as a rival power. "It knows you're here," Marcus realized. "It's trying to break free while it still can." The facility shook as something immense stirred beneath the altar. Emergency alarms blared as the structure began to collapse around them. But that was the least of their problems. Reality itself was starting to warp as the entity pushed against the boundaries of its prison. "Everyone out now," Marcus ordered. "I'll handle this." "We're not leaving you," Sophia protested. "You are if you want to live," Marcus replied firmly. His perfect knowledge showed him exactly what would happen if they stayed. The entity would use their life force to fuel its escape, killing them and making itself exponentially more powerful. Alexander stepped forward. "I can absorb energy. Maybe I can help contain it." "This thing operates on scales beyond conventional energy," Marcus explained. "It would burn through your absorption capacity in microseconds and use your own power against you." The altar cracked completely, and something vast and terrible began to emerge. It had no fixed form, existing as pure malevolence given substance, but its presence caused the team's enhanced abilities to malfunction. Sophia couldn't phase properly. Rachel's psychic defenses crumbled, and Alexander found his energy absorption reversing, draining him instead of protecting him. "Go!" Marcus shouted, pushing them toward the exit tunnel. "That's an order!" As his teammates reluctantly retreated, Marcus turned to face the emerging entity. It towered above him, a writhing mass of darkness and hunger that existed partially in their dimension and partially in spaces that human mathematics couldn't describe. "You are strong, little mortal," The entity communicated directly into his mind, its voice like the death of stars. But strength alone cannot unmake what has existed since before your son was born. You're right, Marcus replied, feeling infinite power flow through his muscles. But I'm not just strong. I'm infinitely strong. And I know exactly how to use that strength. He struck the entity with a punch that contained the force of colliding galaxies. The blow didn't just damage the creature, it damaged the dimensional framework that allowed it to exist in their reality. Space-time cracked around the impact point, creating a wound in the fabric of existence itself. The entity shrieked with voices that had never known sound, retreating into its breaking prison. But Marcus knew from his perfect knowledge that this was only the beginning. The entity's emergence had sent signals across dimensional barriers, alerting others of its kind that Earth's defenses were weakening. This was a test, Valeth observed, watching as Marcus systematically destroyed the altar and the dimensional gateway it contained. The Ancient Ones are probing your reality's defenses, looking for weaknesses. How many more are there? Marcus asked, though his enhanced knowledge had already shown him the answer. Hundreds, Valeth replied. Perhaps thousands. They ruled this reality once, and they intend to rule it again. Your species has inadvertently begun the process of releasing them. As the facility collapsed around them, Marcus realized that his personal struggles with infinite strength had been preparation for something much larger. Humanity was about to face threats that conventional militaries couldn't handle, enemies that operated according to alien physics and incomprehensible motivations. The Aegis team would need to become something more than just enhanced individuals working for the government. They would need to become humanity's first line of defense against cosmic horrors that threatened the very existence of their reality, and Marcus suspected that his third wish, when the time came to make it, would need to address threats on a scale that dwarfed everything he had encountered so far. The Ancient Ones were awakening, and only power beyond mortal comprehension would be sufficient to stop them. The real war was about to begin. 6 months after the North Korean incident, the world had changed in ways that most people couldn't comprehend. Dimensional incursions were occurring weekly across the globe. Ancient entities were breaking free from prisons that had held them since before human civilization began. Government forces were overwhelmed, conventional weapons proved useless, and enhanced individuals were humanity's only effective defense. Marcus stood on the observation deck of the new Aegis headquarters, a massive orbital station that served as both command center and last refuge. Through reinforced windows, he could see Earth below, scarred by battles against creatures that defied every law of physics and biology. The situation is deteriorating faster than we can adapt, General Hayes reported during the daily briefing. We've lost contact with installations in Europe and Asia. The entities are coordinating their attacks, targeting our response capabilities systematically. The assembled team looked exhausted. 6 months of constant combat against cosmic horrors had pushed even enhanced individuals to their limits. Sophia's phasing abilities were becoming unstable from overuse. Rachel's psychic defenses were cracking under the alien mental pressure. Alexander had absorbed so much exotic energy that his cellular structure was beginning to break down. We need more people with abilities, Dr. Winters argued. The experimental enhancement programs take too long, Marcus interrupted. And even if they worked perfectly, conventional enhancements aren't enough. These entities operate on scales that make our abilities look like party tricks. His perfect knowledge showed him the truth that nobody wanted to acknowledge. Humanity was losing. The Ancient Ones were too powerful, too numerous, and too alien for conventional resistance to succeed. Every victory was temporary. Every defense was ultimately overwhelmed. There is another option, Valeth said, materializing in the briefing room for the first time since the North Korean facility. Her presence caused the lights to flicker and the temperature to drop, but the team had grown accustomed to such manifestations. What kind of option? General Hayes asked. She had learned to trust the Demon Queen's counsel, despite her obvious supernatural nature. Marcus still has one wish remaining, Valeth replied, a wish that could alter the fundamental nature of this conflict. Marcus had been avoiding his third wish, knowing that once it was made, his connection to Valeth would be severed. But his enhanced knowledge showed him that time was running out. The Ancient Ones were preparing for a final assault that would break Earth's dimensional barriers permanently. "What would you suggest?" Marcus asked. "That depends entirely on what you value most," Valith replied carefully. "I cannot advise the content of your wishes, only fulfill them. But I will note that your previous wishes focused on personal power and wisdom. Perhaps your final wish should consider broader applications." Marcus understood her meaning. His infinite strength and perfect knowledge had made him formidable, but they were still individual abilities. The threat facing humanity required something that transcended personal power. "I could wish for all humans to have enhanced abilities," Marcus mused. James shook his head. "Too dangerous. Most people can't handle the psychological pressure of supernatural power. Mass enhancement would cause more chaos than the entities themselves. I could wish for the Ancient Ones to be permanently imprisoned again," Marcus continued. "Temporary solution," Rachel observed, her psychic abilities detecting flaws in the concept. "Imprisonment can be broken, as we've already seen. You'd just be delaying the inevitable." Marcus's perfect knowledge showed him hundreds of potential wishes, each with different outcomes and consequences, but one possibility stood out from all the others. A solution so elegant and comprehensive that it would fundamentally reshape the nature of reality itself. "I know what I need to wish for," Marcus announced, "but it's going to change everything, not just for humanity but for the entire cosmic order." He turned to face Valith directly. "My third and final wish is for the creation of a new natural law that prevents any entity from gaining power through the suffering or destruction of others. Any being that attempts to harm, consume, or enslave other sentient creatures will find their own power diminished proportionally to the harm they cause." The Demon Queen's eyes widened with something that might have been surprise or admiration. "That is an extraordinarily ambitious wish. You seek to alter the fundamental mechanics by which the universe operates. Can it be done? I am bound to grant your wishes regardless of their scope. But I must warn you. Implementing such a change will require rewriting the basic laws of reality itself. The consequences will be felt across all dimensions, all timelines, all possible existences." Marcus's perfect knowledge showed him exactly what would happen. The Ancient Ones, whose power came from consuming other forms of life, would find themselves weakened to the point of helplessness. Tyrants and oppressors throughout the galaxy would discover that their strength abandoned them. Predatory species would be forced to develop symbiotic relationships or face extinction, but it would also affect beneficial uses of power. Military forces protecting innocent people would be weakened if their actions caused harm, even to enemies. Enhanced individuals like himself would find their abilities fluctuating based on how they used them. The wish will create a universe where true strength comes only from protecting and nurturing life, Marcus realized. Where power is proportional to one's contribution to the greater good. A universe where might makes right is replaced by a universe where right makes might, Valith confirmed. It is perhaps the most fundamental restructuring of cosmic law that anyone has ever attempted. The briefing room fell silent as everyone processed the implications. Such a change would end the threat of the Ancient Ones permanently, but it would also create a reality where ethical behavior was literally empowered and selfish behavior was physically punishing. "Do it," General Hayes said firmly. "If we're going to remake the universe, let's remake it better." The team nodded their agreement. After months of fighting against overwhelming evil, the chance to create a cosmos where evil was inherently self-defeating was too important to pass up. Marcus took a deep breath and spoke the words that would change everything. "I wish for the implementation of a universal law that diminishes the power of any entity proportional to the harm it causes to other sentient beings, while enhancing the power of those who protect and nurture life." Valith raised both hands, and for a moment she blazed with power that transcended mere supernatural energy. This was the force that shaped reality itself, the cosmic authority that could rewrite the rules by which existence operated. "Your wish is granted," she said, and her voice echoed across dimensions. The change was immediate and absolute. Across Earth, the ancient entities suddenly found themselves unable to maintain their physical forms as their power drained away. Their strength, built on eons of consuming and destroying life, simply evaporated under the new cosmic law. Marcus felt his own abilities shift and stabilize. His infinite strength remained, but now it was tied directly to his intent to protect others. His perfect knowledge expanded to encompass not just consequences, but optimal paths toward preserving and enhancing life. Around the solar system, the effects rippled outward. Aggressive alien civilizations found their war fleets powerless, while peaceful species discovered new abilities emerging among their populations. Galactic tyrants collapsed as their oppression turned against them, and benevolent leaders found themselves able to accomplish miracles of healing and creation. "It's done," Valeth said, her form beginning to fade as the binding between them completed its purpose. "The universe is now governed by the principle that true power serves life rather than destroying it. The Ancient Ones will trouble no one again, for they have no source of strength in this new reality." "What happens to you now?" Marcus asked. "I return to my realm, but I am changed by this experience. Your wishes have shown me that power can be used to create rather than dominate. Perhaps I will find new purposes in this altered cosmos." As the Demon Queen vanished, Marcus looked out at Earth below. Already, the scars of battle were beginning to heal as people with newly stabilized abilities worked to repair the damage. The orbital station itself was transforming, its weapon systems dissolving while its life support and communication systems became more sophisticated. Humanity had not just survived its first encounter with cosmic horror, it had fundamentally changed the rules that allowed such horrors to exist. The universe was now a place where cruelty weakened its practitioners and kindness empowered those who embraced it. Marcus smiled, realizing that his simple wish for strength to help his family had ultimately led to the creation of a cosmos where helping others was the greatest source of power imaginable. It was, he thought, a pretty good outcome for 3 wishes and a desperate summoning in a cramped apartment. The real adventure was just beginning, but now it would unfold in a universe where heroism was literally superhuman and villainy was cosmically self-defeating. Humanity had found its place among the stars not as conquerors but as protectors of a new and better reality.